These leaves are holding on about as well as my mental health is right now.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brianna and this is for Pause in a Book. I make book and lifestyle related content, so if that's something that you're interested in, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Today we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of September. September felt like such a weird month in the fact that I had such an interestingly huge month in August, and I read some really good things in August. And then in September, obviously the quantity went down, but I think also the quality. I had one 5-star read, but that was it. And everything just felt so mediocre. And it was just such a meh month. So let's talk about stats. If you're new to my wrap-ups, when I do my mid-month wrap-up, I always talk about them in chronological order. I don't really do stats. And then when we get to the end of the month, I will talk about all my fun stats, my ratings, and things like that. I've gotten really behind on my goals at the end of the month. I was also kind of talking about them and checking in on them. And I haven't been doing that for several months, and I haven't been tracking it for several months. So I need to go back, check on that, and then I'll come back to you with a whole video for it. So in the month of September, I read 10 books and I also DNF'd another one. I read 4,162 pages. So page count wise, we were doing pretty good. I read a lot of chunky fantasies, which kind of makes sense. My average rating was only a 3.5, which makes sense. I had a very meh month. In terms of genres, I read 3 contemporaries, 3 fantasies, 2 romance, and 2 thrillers. That's it. I was not very diverse in my genre reading this month. For formats, I read 6 books on audio. I read 2 books via ebook and 2 books physically. I had 8 books that were targeted at an adult audience, 1 at a middle grade and 1 at a YA audience. So we're definitely trending in that adult age category range, as we have been all year. So not surprised by that at all. As far as the author status, I read 2 debut authors, 2 from authors that I had read before, and 6 that were new to me, but the authors, they wasn't their debut novel. So, star rating. Like I said, I did have 1 DNF. I had 1 2-star, 0 2.5 stars, 3 3 stars, 3 3.5 stars, 1 4-star, 1 4.5 star, and 1 5-star. So, very middle of the road month. I'm really hoping that October will be better. It's not looking promising yet, but hopefully with the spooky season, we will get better at this. With that said, let's talk about the books that I read. We're going to be talking about them in the order of least like to most like. So we're going to start with my DNF. And this is the one that I'm probably the most sad about, the most upset, and that's Malice by John Gwynne. This is classic high fantasy, right? If you like fantasy, you should like this book. And I didn't. I really struggled to care about a character even 200 pages in. I struggled to really know what was going on in the book. And the writing was very much overarching, kind of just giving you a large picture of what was going on. And so because of that, it wasn't really getting into the head of a character. And it became very, I don't know, I just couldn't connect with someone. And so I ended up DNFing it. I think that it's probably a soft DNF. I don't think that it's a for sure I'm never going to pick this book up again. I think that there were a lot of factors going into why I was DNFing this book. 1, I was reading a lot of high fantasy back to back. And 2, I was in a time crunch. So I was trying to get this book out for the video that I read at Cassidy's recommendations. And because of that, I was trying to get it done so quickly, and so I was on, 3 times speed on the audiobook, and I don't know, I might come back to this and slowly digest it, but for now, it's DNF. Moving on to my 2-star read, and that is There Is No Devil by Sophie Lark. I read this for the first night of Halloween weekend, and this book I've had on my, I was currently reading it for 2 weeks. That is how little I cared about this book. There Are No Saints, which is the first book in this duology, was really good. I gave it 4.5 stars and I was very intrigued by it. This one was so boring. So, like, why did this book exist? And here's the thing, I think this is why sequels in romance books don't necessarily work, because you already have your happy for now or happily ever after at the end of the first book. And so if you then have a sequel with another storyline, or maybe a continuation of a storyline, kind of in this case, it doesn't work really well, because you've already, like, in your brain, like, established, okay, they're good, we can move on, which is why most romances do companion novels with another character rather than trying to, like, continue a certain couple's story. And I was so bored. Both of these characters really just need to go to therapy. That's my opinion, personally. But, no. There were so many scenes of, like, making coffee, and that's boring. And then once we got to the end where there actually was an exciting serial killer type plot, I didn't care enough. And I was just ready for it to be over. It was so late in the game, and we didn't have any, like, high points throughout. So yeah, the pacing in this one just really didn't work, and I was not here for it. So moving on to my 3-star reads, I had 3 of them, and one of them I talked about in my mid-month wrap-up. So if you want a detailed explanation of what I thought about that book, go ahead and check out that video up there. That was 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. Very middle-of-the-road thriller for me. I'm realizing a flaw in my filming setup on this side is that my window is across from me, and when I film in the morning, I get this little glare. And I've tried everything, because the blinds are actually closed. So I don't know. Anyways, I also had 2 other 3-star reads. The first one is The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. I have a vlog about this where I read football romances and went to an NFL game, so I'll link that up above as well. This book started out really strong. It had a lot of promise in it. It's a friends to lovers trope. There's fake dating. Like, those are all my buzzwords, right? Sports, romance. Like, this could have been a really good book. The writing wasn't, like, top tier even at the very beginning of it, but, like, it was fun, right? I mean, like, it had its, like, KU moments. But first off, this is Fade to Black, and I didn't know that. And secondly, like, there was this weird thing about, like, this guy being celibate until, like, and he was trying to say it was because, like, oh, he's in the playoffs, which, like, is legitimate, right? But then, like, he's like, actually, I'm celibate because I've been waiting for you, and I've known you my whole life, but I haven't done anything about it. Like, it's just really dumb. And then he was like, I'm gonna wait till we're married, and I'm like, what? Okay, like, as someone deconstructing from purity culture, that gave me the ick. I wasn't here for it, and, like, the ending was so predictable and so corny, and just, like, and, like, romance endings are corny, right? And so for me to tell you that this is a corny ending, meh. Like, it was just meh. This is a book that existed. Thank you, Eva, for that. I'm gonna use that for the rest of my life. We were on sprints, and I was trying to ask her about a book, and she said it's a book that I existed in. I read it, and now, like, I can't say anything else. That's how I say things. So another book that existed and I read it. Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is the first book in the Greenbone trilogy. This has been going all over the place on BookTube. This is another one of the books that I read for Cassidy's video. This one, I liked more than the cheat sheet. This one, like, teetered on 3 to 3.5. But I think it was just that, like, the pacing was just a little bit too slow. I do really like Shay, the sister in here. I think she's super badass, and I'll be very, very sad if she ends up becoming, like, a bad guy or something. But I will continue on with the series. This just, like, wasn't the strongest start to it. But, like, it has its interesting aspects. Essentially what this is about is a kind of, like, mafia type family. And they are, like, they can wear jade, and then they have superpowers or, like, magical abilities. And the more jade you wear, for some people, like, it starts affecting your health. And so their grandfather, who was, like, the head of this, is starting to, like, not be well anymore because of how much jade he had been wearing. And so then there's, like, a lot of, like, family, like, structural change as far as, like, who becomes the head of the house, and then the second in command, and, like, who is in charge of the military. It's interesting the fact that it was very political, but like I wanted more of that and less of the family drama, if that makes sense. I did really like the audiobook for it. I think that the audiobook narrator is pretty great. I would have liked 2 narrators, like for the 2 points of view. The other thing that was a little bit weird was that it changes POV in the middle of a chapter. Definitely a book that I'll continue on with the series. It's just not one that I'll necessarily do like right away. Okay, then I had 3.5 star reads, and I actually talked about all of them in my mid-month wrap-up. The first one was Hurricane Season by Nicole Melby. This is a middle grade story about a girl who is dealing with just so much, and her father has an undiagnosed mental illness, and she's basically trying to hide that from the world so that CPS does not come and like take her away because she's just living with her dad. He's a single parent. And she doesn't want anyone to know that he is struggling, and so she really tries to hide that. And that's a lot to deal with as a 12-year-old kid, so understandable. And it's also all in the middle of hurricane season. So it was a really cute book for middle grade, like a really good book for middle grade audiences. I'm just not the target audience, obviously. I also read Corinne by Rebecca Morrow. I did an entire review about this book, and I'll link that one up above as well, trying to figure out who Rebecca Morrow is, because this was a pseudonym for a New York Times bestselling author. I'm really proud of that video. I had a lot of fun doing it. So if you haven't checked it out, go do that. But this is essentially about a girl who gets kicked out of her church, her cult. And then 10 years later, I think it was, she ends up getting reacquainted with the boy that she had sex with as a teenager, and what led to her getting kicked out. Of course, he didn't get kicked out, just her. Because as churches happen. Just struggling with trying to deconstruct her faith, trying to navigate life post-church and post-thing that had literally indoctrinated your life. This book was really interesting, and I think if you are someone struggling with, or not struggling with, but deconstructing your faith, I think that this will be really relatable to you if you had some religious trauma. I also read The Analysics by Olivia Blake. I have talked about this one pretty much in depth in my mid-month wrap-up. I will continue on with the series, but I think that this book was just a little bit too overhyped for me. I was really expecting this to be a 5-star, and it let me down a little bit. And I think I liked some of the characters, but not all of them, and the ending I think was just way too fast. Okay, I had one 4-star read, and I did talk about this one already, but I'll mention it again. I had Stay Awake by Megan Golden. This was actually really interesting. I don't think that it's quite as good as The Night Swim, but I think it's just so different than The Night Swim, and so I really enjoyed it. This is about a woman who wakes up and she's forgotten 2 years of her life, and so that's very disorienting, where you go you try to go back to your apartment, and obviously it's not your apartment because it was 2 years ago, and everything just seems to have changed, and she has Stay Awake written on her hands. So I think it was really interesting, very disorienting psychological thriller. I gave 4.5 stars to The Passing Playbook by Isaac Fitzsimmons. This was so cute. I think that if you like books like Stay Gold or Home Field Advantage, this would also be a really good book for you. This is about a trans boy who moves to a new school and is trying to pass as a boy. He goes on to the boys' soccer team and tries to just pass. There are some discriminatory laws that are forcing him to kind of debate on whether or not he wants to stay stealth or come out, and I think this was really good, and I think for a YA audience this was fantastic. Will I reread it again? No, but here's the thing. I always talk about this, how I'm not really reading YA anymore, and I don't really like YA, but then a book like this comes along and it just hits you in the feels, and you're oh, I actually like this. I wasn't bored at all. It is a very quick audiobook, but it was really cute. And lastly, I have talked about this book so many times before, so I will just talk about this briefly, but I've talked about it in my mid-month wrap-up and in my vlog where I read Cassidy's books, and that's Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler. This is my only 5-star read of the month, and will likely make my best of the year. Not likely. There's no question about it. It will definitely make that list somewhere. This is just so beautifully written. It follows a brother and sister who are on 2 opposite sides of the empire. One is fighting for the empire and one is trying to take it down. It's definitely been comped as a gay fantasy Star Wars, and I totally get why. There's a lot more to it. There's these demon gargoyle type ghoul creatures that they are trying to fight that take on such interesting forms, and there's like spiders and but massive spiders and just like very interesting world building in this book, and I cannot wait to read the sequel. Alright, so those are the books that I read in September. Like I said, it was a very mediocre month, and I read most of my good books at the beginning of the month, which I think made the end of the month feel so much more mediocre. Hopefully October will be better. Let me know down below what your favorite book of September was, and if you're not feeling chatty, you can put a pumpkin emoji, because it is officially spooky season. No one can deny that now. That is all I have for you today. If you're new here and you have not yet subscribed, there's a little red button that you can do so down below the video. If you'd like to hang out with me more, I do have my very own Patreon. We have an exclusive Discord and other exciting perks. The link for that is down below, as well as the link to my Instagram, Goodreads, and Twitter. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.